Welcome to Talking with Tatchell. The invasion and occupation of Iraq has been the subject of unprecedented lies and propaganda from just about every side in the conflict. The anti-war left and its Islamist allies often claim that the invasion was part of a war against Islam. Not true. It was a war to defend and extend American geopolitical interests, and in particular to seize control of Iraq's oil supplies. The United States, of course, in its defense, claims that the war was all about democracy and human rights. We know that the chaos, the misery, and the widespread abuse of human rights in Iraq today puts pay to that lie and that propaganda. We also know that many on the left and their Islamist allies put all the deaths in Iraq almost exclusively down to the invasion and occupation, when the reality is that nowadays many of those who are being murdered are the victims of Sunni violence against Shia and Shia retaliation against Sunni. You know, the death squads in Iraq, particularly the Shia fundamentalist death squads of the Badr and Sadr brigades, are causing very widespread casualties. This has got nothing to do with the American occupation. It is a bloody internal civil war which is wrecking the lives of tens of thousands, if not millions, of Iraqi citizens. With me to discuss this whole issue of the propaganda, the lies, the misinformation about Iraq is Iraqi exile Nadia Mahmoud, a member of the Iraqi Freedom Congress. Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you.
I'd like to start by putting this to you, the argument we often hear that the invasion of Iraq and the ongoing occupation is part of the West's war against Islam. How do you respond to that?
I disagree with this allegation, because what we have witnessed in Iraq after the war and invasion, that the political Islam is immersed and could reach the power, and now they are in the government, in parliament, in controlling the streets, and they are ruling everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I think they achieved what they haven't even dreamt to achieve in this war and occupation. So actually it's not against political Islam, it's empowering them, and it took them to power.
Mm. And what about the argument that the United States is there to defend democracy and, you know, to enhance and empower the Iraqi people against dictatorship?
Well, we have said that before the war took place in 2003. We said this war is not about liberating Iraq from a dictatorship or democracy or fighting the terrorists in Iraq. We said that, you know, before the war itself.
What do you think it is about?
It's about achieving the policies of United States to control the world after the collapse of Soviet Union, to appear the first power in the world. Mm-hmm. And they want to appear, since, you know, from 1991, to be the superpower in the world, to control all over the world. And they could.
But why is Iraq of importance?
Can I come to this question after I speak about the democracy?
Yeah.
What we have now, theocracy in Iraq.
Theocracy?
Theocracy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not democracy. I mean, there are many people killed. There is no, safety for anybody if they have, you know, they express their ideas, or we have seen many women activists being threatened, and many of them have to flee Iraq. Seeking for refuge, seeking for safe places because of the terror. And so there is no democracy in Iraq. There is no state in Iraq. There is no government in Iraq. How can we speak about democracy? Democracy means there is a state, there is institution, there is election, proper election. There is people can participate in the political process, but all this is not there in Iraq. So how can we speak about democracy? It's not about democracy. And actually we see the indications of theocracy in Iraq, not democracy. Now we come to your question about
the United States' motives, and why is it focusing on Iraq?
Focusing in Iraq, it's not, as you know, it's not a new issue, Iraq. Since 1991, America interfered in Iraq after Iraq invaded Kuwait, and then they imposed the economic sanctions for 13 years. And we know all this was United States responsible and behind this policies, aggressive policies against Iraqi people. So to achieve their interests, and they control the whole area, and they spoke about the Middle East, new arena in Middle East, like they want to implement democracy, their norms of democracy in Middle East. So it's about controlling the world, to appear they are the superpower in the world. No any other state can compete with them, not China, not Russia, not Europe. So just the matter of...
Do you think there's credibility in the argument that, the neocon grouping within the United States has an agenda to democratize the Middle East as a way of, establishing and sustaining American power in that region, in particular to ensure more stable regimes, more pro-Western regimes, vis-a-vis control of oil supplies, and that Iraq is really the test bed for that, and the idea is to establish a client state in that region, which can then hopefully be the springboard for the further destabilization of neighboring states, so that so this region, which has historically been quite anti-American, can come under American control. Would you say it's a fair assessment?
It's not. It's not. I mean, if we look at the democracy in Iraq now, if that model, if this norm, American wants to imply it in many other countries in Middle East, I think the fate of millions of people in this area will be collapsed. I think the main issue in Middle East is Israel-Palestine struggle. If we solve this struggle, if we have two states in Palestine and in Israel, I think this is the main issue in Middle East. It's not.
Well, why are they involving Iraq then?
They came to Iraq, as I said, it's part of the many series of actions was taken against Iraq since 1991, after the collapse of Soviet Union. And
but why? What in view is what is the motive? What is the motive for Iraq as opposed to anywhere else?
In Iraq,
is it down to oil?
I think the oil, they could even take it even under Saddam Hussein's regime. I mean, Saddam Hussein was, I think, prepared to negotiate with American and the prices to keep him in the power. I think the issue, they can't get it if they want, not in this way. I know if you look at the law now, the oil and gas law, the drafted law now, if you look at it, I mean, I don't think they will achieve this if it's Saddam Hussein's here. There are items, it shows there is looting, very clear looting for Iraqi wealth in Iraq, for natural resources. The oil, how they drafted this law, it's not out yet, and they try to, pass it behind the people's backs. If you look at it, I think...
This is a law, just explain, this is a law for the de facto privatisation of Iraq's oil wealth. Yeah. And it will give major, very lucrative and favourable concessions to big Western oil companies.
Yes, yeah, and it gives, like facilities, and I don't think there is any government all over the world will give such, contracts to any companies like that we are seeing now in this draft.
Do you think it's fair to say that essentially the Iraqi government is over a barrel, so to speak, and that because they're dependent on the Americans for security and other sources, that they are being pushed and pressured into signing away these rights and giving these concessions, which no normal independent sovereign government would do.
Yeah, I think it's agreement between two parties, between American states, USA, and Iraqi government, the puppet government, and I think they are sharing the profits. Now the Islamic militias are in the power, and this draft of the law...
There, but when you say Islamist militias are in power, we're talking about the Supreme Council of Islamic Revolution in Iraq and the Muqtada al-Sadr's grouping.
So they are in the government, and this law will give them the profit of the oil and share it with the companies. And I think the price for them to stay in the power is to sell or to have contracts in such big profits to companies, foreign companies, that we never, I mean, under Saddam's regime, it was like giving profit 9%. But now they give the companies 45 or 50%. Profit for the companies. So I think for them to stay in the power, they have to give such conditions.
Because they're dependent on the Americans for the military and logistical and security support.
To provide them with the security, to keep their forces there. So this is one side of it. And the other side is that from this profit, and we are speaking about millions of dollars here, for them
billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars. For them to be able to control the region, they need this money. Otherwise, they have nothing to provide to people. There is nothing that can control the areas without having this, without having the oil. I was in Iraq in February, and I have heard from people, they said Muqtada Sadr group, in the area where they control, every month they give their members oil and gas. So people join their army. And anybody can ask, from where they get this oil? So they get our natural resources to buy or to recruit people. So it means there is no government here, and the militia is there. They use...
So what you're suggesting is Muqtada al-Sadr's group, through their position in the Iraqi government, are using and exploiting it to siphon off gas and oil, which they then use for their own political use, to recruit people to their militias, to recruit people to vote for them, to win favors.
And because there is unemployment in Iraq, and there is no welfare system in Iraq, and there is, I mean, the unemployment is 80% now in Iraq. So people just to secure one part of their, needs, such as, foil, or because there is no electricity again, no gas, no. So they depend on what they get from Muqtada Sadr, and they sent the male members of the families to join his army. So it's. From one side appear Muqtada Sadr like he is against the government, but he's using the oil from the government and recruit members to his army, and that's how it works. So,
we're talking about very, very major political corruption here.
Absolutely, yes.
We've all heard about the huge, vast sums of money that have gone missing, and this is presumably where a lot of it is going. I
mean, there are billions of dollars. Nobody knows where it's gone. And
what's your view? What's your view about where it's gone?
I think the people who are in the government, in parliament, are responsible on this money. And
but what are they doing with it?
Well, you can hear here in London, buy hotels, buy houses, and make.
So you're saying some of it is for this political aggrandizement to fund militias and recruit members,
Yes,
but
yeah.
some of it is just like going into personal bank accounts.
Yes, and because the situation is not settled, so nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. So, you know, loot as soon and as much as possible before anything happened. That's the principle among themselves there. So that's why you see, you know, like, you know, many ministers, members of parliament, they are committed these crimes, and I think they have to be account responsible. And this is wealth belong to Iraqi people, and they all have to be accountable. People who took part in the interim council in these governments till we are seeing now.
So it seems like you've got, on the one hand, the Americans pressing the Iraqi government to give these favourable, exceedingly favourable contracts to Western companies for profiteering of the oil. And on the other hand, you've got corrupt ministers within the government who are siphoning up money for their own private, you know, or political militias and for their own personal bank accounts. So it's the country is being looted left, right and centre.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Iraq, one of the most richest country in the world. And I mean, if you look at to people's lives there, if you go, for example, to Kirkuk city, which is, I think, the whole city, if you look at it, it's very, very, very poor city. And this is not Kirkuk, all the cities in Iraq. There is no electricity, there is no services, there is no water, there is no, you know, I mean, nothing there, no proper food. Not just Iraq, even Kurdistan, Iraq, the north side of Iraq. I went there, as I told you, in February, and 4 days, I was in Kurdistan, 4 days, I haven't seen electricity. And this is most, you know, quiet area if you compare it with the rest of Iraq. And this, I mean, this area is, since 1991, is separated from Iraq. They have their own government, if you like, but you can't see electricity, you can't see clean water, and that's why people started to dig in their gardens, their houses, to get water from it. So, I mean, all these billions, all these billions, where is gone, these billions? I mean, now it's look like Iraq people do not want these billions, and they are giving it to companies. Why you are giving this money to these companies? Don't we need it? If we don't have electricity, if we don't have water, if we don't have food, if we don't have education, if we don't have proper schools for education, if we don't have food for kids, if we don't have, you know, enough good classes for students, why you are giving it to these companies? The reason is just because they cannot stay in power unless they compromise with America and with their companies. So to keep them in their seats in the parliament and the government, they do that. They contract with these companies, and they deprive Iraqi people from their wealth.
In theory, the current Iraqi government has been democratically elected. You know, there was an open election, candidates stood, this government is the result. What you seem to be saying is that that is true, but it is operating within a framework where it is still beholden, first of all, to the militias who back many of the government ministers. I think there's at least 3 government ministers who are the political representatives of organisations whose armed wings are the death squads. You know, killing unveiled women, gays and lesbians, trade unionists, journalists, students, Sunnis, you name it. But it seems to me what you're saying is that, in a sense, this government is in power only nominally and within the constraints of a framework that's being dictated by, basically, multinational, you know, corporations backed by the United States. And the United States, surely having oversight over this whole thing, must be complicit in this mass looting of the country.
Well, I didn't, and I will not say that this government elected democratically. First of all, we were against the election. And we said, because we know there is a country under occupation. And there is no thing happened in Iraq, no laws, no institution, no agreement taken independently by Iraqi people, because everything has to be approved and agreed by the American ambassador in Iraq. So actually, whatever government gonna be in power under occupation, gonna be representative of American policy. So we don't have independency. Whatever we do, whoever we want to choose in this situation under invasion, it has to be approved and agreed and have the present from American.
Okay, well,
so
if that's true, then the question we must ask, if all this is happening under American tutelage and approval and connivance, then it is the United States government that is colluding, A, with the looting of the country and with massive corruption by government ministers who are personally pocketing this money and using it to fund death squads and so on. And they are also, implicated in the death squad killings because they're backing the ministers in the government who are behind it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, look at al-Maliki. He's the prime minister. He received congratulation letters when he been elected from Condoleezza Rice and George Bush. And then everybody knows in Iraq that when they started what they call a security plan a month ago, everybody in Iraq knows this fact, that al-Maliki himself warned Muqtada Sadr and his group to flee Iraq. Second day...
They wanted him
to flee Iraq.
Why?
Why? Because Americans started the security plan to tidy up the Baghdad city or other cities from, terrorists.
The death squads and insurgents. Yeah.
So, and al-Maliki knew that Muqtada Sadr will be a target for American. So they gave him the warning, and second day you can't see Muqtada Sadr. And I read myself in a report, al-Maliki, he spoke like the spokesperson of Muqtada Sadr. He said, Muqtada Sadr just in visit to Iran for a few days and he'll be back. I thought, he looks like the spokesperson of Muqtada Sadr. And why Muqtada Sadr in Baghdad just the day that security plan started? And Americans started to see these facts, that Iraqi government itself, it has the wings of terrorists from Shi'i side and from Sunni side. And these people themselves, they are in the government from one side, and the other side they are acting like against American and against occupation, like Muqtada Sadr. So they are, like playing this role. Foot here and foot there. Foot with the government and foot like, militia and against the occupation.
So bring this whole thing about their role, the links with the militias and so on, and all the death squads.
Yeah.
We're aware of the report in The Lancet which suggested that something like over 600,000 Iraqi civilians have died since the invasion. Although it's not possible to be absolutely certain, the exact figure, but that seems a broad ballpark figure. Even the Iraqi government's much smaller figure of 150,000 and so on is still very shocking. What I find very strange is that the left-wing chorus, anti-war chorus, is constantly about it's the Americans and the coalition forces, when in fact the reality to me seems to be that a lot of these deaths nowadays are due to Sunni insurgents bombing Shia shrines, murdering people from Shia backgrounds, and vice versa. I've had friends of mine whose family members have been murdered for no other reason than they've got a Sunni name. The Shia death squads have come to their door, you're a Sunni, boom, bullet in the back of the head.
That's absolutely true. I mean, the killing, it comes, as you said, from the occupation forces, one, and from Shi'i and Sunni, who are in the government, by the way, and they are facing each other in the streets. So we have them in the government and the street as well. In Iraqi society, never we identified ourselves Sunni and Shi'i. And you see it's mixed society. You go to many families, they are so mixed, Sunni and Shi'i. Now, مقتدى الصدر and its militias attacking Sunnis suburbs, and they try to threaten people, and the same thing that Sunni militias. And as you said, they kill each other based on the names. And this is something we haven't seen in Iraq. And this is, again, a result of the war and the occupation. I mean, both of them are killing. So the killing now, it comes from occupation forces. It comes from the militias, Shia militias, Muqtada Sadrs and others, who are taking part in the government itself, and the Sunni side, who are, again, taking part in the government and appear as a resistance. So they play from 2, 3, sides.
But the essence of it is that, day after day, when we hear about these shocking car bombings in markets and so on, the Americans, for all their crimes, are not planting those bombs. It's fanatics, within Iraq killing other Iraqis.
Okay, this is what happened. But again, why this happened now? The question. Why we didn't see that in Iraqi society in the last century? We had Sunni and we had Shia. Why they didn't kill each other before? Why?
Do you think this
now?
has been fomented by the United States as part of a divide and rule strategy?
Since 1991, as far as I'm aware, since 1991, what you could hear in media, that there is oppressed Kurds in the north and oppressed Shia in the south. And if you look at to Iraqi society, they don't identify themselves on religious or national basis. They identify themselves on political basis. We have many political parties. They don't show that people in Iraq oppressed on political basis. I mean, the media, the Western media, that's what they try to show. Like Iraqi society is sectarian society, which it wasn't. That happened, and that, supported and given identity in the opposition conferences that happened in London and in other places.
What's happened is there's been, for whatever reason, whoever the motive, whoever's behind it, there's been this redefinition of people, or this redivision of society on religious grounds and to some extent ethnic grounds in a way that never really happened before or existed before.
Yeah, before you can't hear many political parties. But what happened is that they tried to give this national identity or religious identity. And the Iraqi opposition at that time, they bought this this deception or deceptive identity. They identify this is Muslim and this is Kurd, and the American dealt with them on this basis. And
so it suited the Americans to have all these divisions.
Yeah, and they knew they would be supported. I mean, the Kurds, representative of Kurds, and representative of Shia, and representative. Now that's why. When we said, in London conference, we said this division on nationalist or religious basis, it would create a civil war if Saddam goes. Yeah. That's what we said. Okay.
Well, on that note, we'll have to finish, Nadia Mahmoud. Thank you very much for joining me. I think we probably need to have an anti-war movement that also appeals for an end to religious, ethnic and sectarian violence, as much as an appeal to oppose the foreign occupation of Iraq. Join me next week for Talking with Tatchell. Thank you.